Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So you came to us with a really clear mission this time, to finally, officially retire that old easy button, Indica for chill, Sativa for buzz.
The classic shortcut, yeah.
Right, the shortcut that, let's be honest, is often just a lie in the modern market.
It is. That whole distinction is pretty much obsolete now because of decades of just aggressive breeding.
So our goal here is to get you past those simple labels.
Exactly. We want to give you a powerful chemistry-based playbook. We're talking about terpenes, cannabinoid ratios, and what really truly matters.
Which is the chemovar.
The chemovar, that unique chemical fingerprint that's actually inside the jar.
So we're not just saying the old system was wrong. We're saying it's broken.
It's broken.
And the thing that predicts your experience is the actual chemistry, not the name on the package or where its great-great-grandparent plant grew 200 years ago.
That's the whole issue right there. Plant shape, geography, that's all just an interesting footnote now. It tells you almost nothing reliable about what you're going to feel today.
Okay, so let's establish why these legacy labels, Indica and Sativa, even became the shorthand in the first place. And, more importantly, why that system has failed so dramatically.
Well, the distinction is purely historical and botanical, really. You have to go way back to the 18th and 19th centuries.
Wow, that far back.
Yeah, botanists were just describing what they saw. Indica land races, the ones from Central Asia near the Hindu Kush Mountains, they were short, bushy plants.
Right. Sturdy.
Exactly. And then the sativa plants, which grew closer to the equator, were the opposite. Tall, spindly, with these really narrow leaves.
So it was just a description of how the plant looked and where it grew, like describing an oak tree versus a pine tree.
Precisely.
So how on earth did the market start using these geographic names as a guide for, the actual effect?
It was a massive simplification. Because the early illegal market got its products from specific regions, people just started to associate the plant type with the general feeling.
Ah, so it was correlation, not causation.
Totally. It was never meant to be a guaranteed forecast of effects.
Which brings us right to the problem today. Because now, almost everything you can buy is a hybrid.
Everything. Growers aren't breeding for geographic purity. They're breeding for high THC, for specific flavors, for yield.
For what works indoors.
Exactly. And when you crossbreed plants for decades, you're just mixing everything up. The genetics that once described a plant's shape are now blended with totally new chemical profiles.
So an indica on the shelf today could very well have a chemical profile that looks more like a classic sativa.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
The label has become, at best, a kind of aisle sign. A suggestion of a style, maybe. But its predictive power is basically zero.
Okay, so that means we have to stop reading the name on the box and start reading the ingredients list. You have to know what chemistry to look for.
Yeah.
So what are the critical components on that certificate of analysis, the COA, that you absolutely have to look at?
Okay, so I'd say we need to focus on 4 areas. And we have to start with what is probably the most powerful part of the experience after THC itself.
Terpenes.
Terpenes?
They're so fascinating. They're the aromatic compounds, right? That's why one strain smells like lemon peel, another smells like a pine forest.
They're not just about aroma, though. This is the critical part. They seem to modulate the entire experience.
What do you mean by modulate?
Well, the research is still ongoing, but the idea is that certain terpenes interact with THC and the other cannabinoids to sort of steer the subjective feeling you get.
So if they're steering the experience, what are the, say, top 4 terpenes you should start tracking on a label right away?
Okay, you should track myrcene, limon, pine, and linalool. Those 4 are usually the most dominant, and they show up often enough that you can actually build some reliable personal data around them.
And what's the general idea behind each of them?
Generally speaking, myrcene is often tied to relaxing effects, limon to a brighter energy, pine to focus, and linalool to a sense of calm. These are really powerful indicators.
Got it. So terpenes are steering the ship. Let's talk about the engine power. That would be the cannabinoid ratio, right? Specifically THC to CBD.
Yes, that ratio is your foundation for intensity control. It's pretty straightforward. A high THC, low CBD product is, usually going to deliver a much more powerful, more intoxicating experience.
That's the heavy hitter.
That's the heavy hitter. But if you're looking for a smoother ride, the reverse is true.
So a balanced product.
Exactly. Products with a more balanced ratio, like a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 of THC to CBD, they tend to feel much smoother, more manageable for a lot of people.
And that's because the CBD acts as a buffer.
It can, yeah. CBD can modulate some of THC's more intense effects. So if you're experimenting, starting with a product that has at least some CBD in it is often a much safer path.
Okay, beyond the big two, THC and CBD, we're starting to see things like CVG and THCV on labels. How much attention should you pay to these minor cannabinoids?
I'd say treat them like flavor elements for now. They add character, they add nuance.
But they're not driving the experience.
Right. They're not going to override the main THC to CBD ratio or the terpene profile, but they do contribute to what makes each cultivar unique. The research is moving so fast, but for now, think of them as interesting bonuses that round everything out.
So the experience is really the sum of all these different parts working together, which brings us to the famous, or maybe infamous, entourage effect. What is it, and how solid is the science there?
The entourage effect is this idea that all the compounds in the whole plant, the cannabinoids, the terpenes, they all work in synergy to create a better, more rounded experience than if you just used one compound alone, like isolated THC.
Sounds great in theory. Where does the science actually stand on that? Is it proven?
Well, proven is a strong word. There's definitely supported data. We see it in lab work, in animal models, and in some human studies, too.
Okay.
Scientists basically agree these compounds interact. They're just still mapping out the how and the when of those interactions. So, treat it as a great guiding principle, but maybe not scientific gospel just yet.
We've laid out the chemistry. Now we need to make this completely practical.
Right.
But first, let's just retire one more myth. This idea that flavor is tied to the old labels. Indicas are always sweet and berry flavored. Sativas are always skunky.
That is a total myth, a complete myth, and it's so important to get this. The aroma and flavor are driven 100% by the terpene mix, period.
It has nothing to do with the name.
Nothing. Because breeders are just mixing and matching, you can find a super pine-dominant indica and a sweet dessert-flavored sativa. You have to look at the terpene line on the COA.
Okay, so you're standing in the dispensary, looking at a label full of this complex chemistry. Based on the sources, how do you start building a personal vibe-based profile?
You can start with some really actionable pairings. For instance, if you're looking for a bright, energetic, maybe a social kind of vibe, then you should actively look for options that are heavy in limon and pine. That combination often contributes to that sort of uplifted, focused feeling.
And what about for the opposite goal? The calm night in, the wind-down experience.
Then you want to explore things that are myrcene or linalool forward. Myrcene is that one that's often tied to physical relaxation, and linalool is that floral compound, like in lavender, that's linked to calming, sometimes even sedative effects.
It's a much more reliable framework than just guessing with an old name.
So much more reliable.
Okay, this feels like a smarter way to shop. Give us the final checklist. You walk in. What are the 3 steps to shopping with chemistry?
Okay, first, choose your ratio. Start with moderation, a 1-to-1 or low THC, and then you can adjust from there based on your own experience.
Step 1, ratio.
Step 2, read the certificate of analysis, the COA. You have to confirm the terpene percentages, the full cannabinoid profile, and, this is crucial, make sure it passed all its safety tests for contaminants.
Right. Safety in chemistry. What's the pro tip, the thing that takes you from being an informed shopper to an expert on yourself?
The ultimate pro tip, the one that beats every single marketing claim, is to journal your results.
Just write it down.
Write it down. The cultivar name, the specific ratio, the dominant terpenes, and most importantly, the subjective experience. How did it actually feel for you? A couple of sessions of tracking your own data is infinitely more valuable than any label.
That's the path right there. And to give you something actionable to try today, the sources had a great suggestion. A simple experiment. Pick 2 different products. Make sure they have similar THC levels, but totally different dominant terpene profiles. Maybe one that's myrcene dominant and one that's limon dominant, and just compare them.
That direct comparison is the fastest way to map your own body's response to specific chemovars. You'll learn so much about what actually works for you.
And that brings us to the close of this deep dive. Let's just quickly recap the new framework for everyone.
Okay. Forget the outdated categories. You need to shop by the chemovar, that specific combination of terpenes and cannabinoid ratios.
Use the COA to verify what's in there and take personal notes to track how it affects you.
And treat indica and sativa as just style names, like brand names. They're not science. Your journal is the only guide that really matters.
Right.
And, that leads to a final thought for you to chew on. If we're relying so heavily on our own personal data, on journaling, because everyone's body chemistry is unique, What new questions does that raise about the future of trying to standardize product classification at all?
Right. If the ultimate answer is always personal, how useful can a generalized system ever truly be?
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, in a world of this much complex chemistry, the ultimate guide is just your own response.
Find your chemovar, find your vibe. Thanks for diving deep with us.